Good evening, everybody. I'm Dave Orlowski, and I am the Data and Testing Administrator for the district. I was a principal in the district at Sweeney Elementary for 8 years. I was the principal at the 6th grade center when it opened, and I've been working in this role for just over 4 years. Okay? Tonight we're going to do our second of 2 of these public listening and input sessions. And I'm going to talk about why we're here and some updates from last time, and then I'll talk about the process for how we're going to collect questions. Okay, so the purpose, and just to make sure we're clear, is we know that no matter what we do as a design team for this, we don't have perfect perspective. So all of you that came bring a different age kid, probably from different schools, different kid experience here in the district. You give us something that we don't have, and that's a broader perspective. So what you bring to the table here today is very important for us. And I'll talk, we've gotten feedback from the first session, we've gotten phone calls, emails, all that's been very helpful in shaping some of this process, and I'll talk about that more in a couple minutes. The format's going to be me going between 15 and 20 minutes, talking about some of the information that we have here, and then the rest of the time will be your Q&A and your comments. The comments will be taken via, can you hold up a clipboard back there, Katie? And Katie and who else is getting, both Katies actually back there.
2 Katies and Maria for sure.
And Maria will be coming around. If you have a question and you don't have a question card, raise your hand, they'll bring one to you and they'll collect it. They're parent volunteers that are helping us. These guys up here are also parent volunteers, and I'll talk more about them in a minute. They will sort through the questions, and the idea is that no district people are trying to determine what questions are getting asked. It's this parent group, and they will make sure we get to as many questions as possible by sorting through them and making sure we're not asking the same questions over and over again. The other thing they'll do is, this is a meeting tonight that's about the attendance areas. And so tonight we'll be talking about the attendance areas. So if there's questions or comments unrelated to that topic, they're probably going to put that aside. Okay? We'll still get those and we'll look at them later, but for tonight, it's about the attendance area project. Okay. I want to introduce a couple other people that are going to be helping out here today. And from our communications department, Crystal McNally might jump in periodically. And Jim McClousich, the principal at East Junior High, is here, and he's going to be helping me as well. Jim volunteered to sit in tonight. As many of you probably heard, our interim superintendent, Gary Anger, is very sadly and unexpectedly out with a medical issue that requires like immediate treatment for him, so he is out. And Jim has volunteered to sit in here. Jim was part of the attendance area task force that I'll talk more about in a minute. Jim attended the last session. Jim has been heavily involved in this work. So if I get confused, or Jim or Crystal has some different insight, or maybe one of our principals here who has a different insight, they might jump in to make sure we're giving as good answers as we can. And so thanks to Jim for stepping in at the last minute for Gary as well. Okay? All right, so what I'm going to do is, I'm going to first, very quickly, and I know, how many of you were here at the first session? Okay, so a good number of you. I'm going to talk about some updates that have happened since then. So if you weren't here, I apologize that you might not have the background on some of this unless you've either watched online or you spent some time looking at our resources. So to let you know kind of what a bit of a moving target this is, here's what has happened since September 14th that we know about, okay? A new development popped up on the horizon called Haven Ridge, and this is out by, I'll show you exactly on the map where this is, but out by the south of, it's actually in Prior Lake, so it's in that southeastern part of the district. 76 more homes that we weren't, 76 villa homes and 57 single-family homes. We also updated, we talked about this feeder model where 3 of our elementary schools feed into one middle school and 3 feed into the other. We didn't have that perfectly set up last time. The new scenarios will show that, as will the numbers. There's a child care center being built in front of Jackson Elementary right now. 40 of the 152 possible spots will be child or school-age children. We have been in contact with them for this information and to try to get a sense of how many of those 40 could wind up being kids that are not in the Jackson attendance area. So that's almost like another mini development itself. We don't have good numbers from them yet or what their experience is at their other centers in Waconia and Chaska, but we're working on that. So we kind of made a working estimate of what that could be. If you follow the local news, you'll see, at least for now, the downtown development was stopped. So that changes things a little bit. Canterbury Commons, just last week, was put on hold. We are reviewing the middle school capacities to make sure we have that right with both our owners rep, ICS, and Wold, our architects. And then, as I talked about, we're going into this true feeder model, and I'll talk more about that on the map. Okay? All right. Since 9/14, we also had an additional board meeting where the board said, yes, again, this is what our plan is. Our plan is to allow intra-district transfers as much as possible. And we built out the logistics of that just a little bit further. And so here's what that would look like. And actually, before I do that, let me clarify. Intra-district transfer means I live in the Sweeney attendance area, but for child care or preference reasons or whatever, I want to attend Red Oak. That means you're a Shakopee school district student changing schools within our district. We have about, at the elementary level, close to 400 of those right now, which was a shockingly large number to me. But the plan would be that, I think the majority of those are for child care reasons, would be my guess, but that those would be grandfathered in, those type of requests. But then we would have an additional process as well, which is on March 1st, a form to request that intra-district transfer would become available. On April 1st, we process that whole batch and look, what is the kind of moving parts in the net of this for each of our schools to see can we approve all these, with the goal of saying yes as much as possible. That's what the board direction was on this, okay? And then we would continue that throughout the summer with a July 15th end date that gives us time to respond to the staffing needs of that building. There could be a scenario where we get to the batch and we go to look at this school and second grade is full, but third grade has space. So it's not a true all or nothing. That's why we're also going to be, when they come in, we're going to date and time stamp each of them. And if we have enough planning time, and we don't know how many people will take advantage of this when all is said and done, but if it comes down to looking at when they were date and time stamped, then that's what we'll use in order to make the final decisions, okay? A key part of this is, if this is something you choose to intra-district transfer, busing will not be provided outside of your attendance area, okay? Did I hit everything on it, Crystal and Jim? Are we good? Okay. All right. Now I'm going to go back into, this is what I did last time. Okay. Now you're getting, that was all updates. So I do want to emphasize, you can see with this part, there's a lot of moving pieces here. That's 5 weeks worth of stuff. Some of that is us fixing things, but some of that is what's happening in the district. Okay. All right. So why are we even here? Going to go back in history a little bit to 2002-03, and this was our attendance areas for 5 years, okay? We had 3 elementary schools at that time, Pearson, Red Oak, and Sweeney. They were just K-4 buildings. Sunpath was a 5-6. The district had just over 4,000 kids. We had a 7 through 9 at East, 10 through 12 at the high school. Key number here is spring of 02, we had 4,250 students. In 2007-08, we moved to this attendance area model, and I'll zoom in on this in a second to give you a better look. Key number there, in those 5 years, we grew by 1,500 students or so, about 300 students a year. And I'm going to zoom in on that, I think. Yeah, so just to point that out, here was Sweeney up here, Sunpath was these 3 yellow areas, Pearson right there, Eagle Creek out here, or sorry, Red Oak out here, and Eagle Creek, this area down there, okay? And this is our current attendance areas, and we're now up another 1,500 students, about, again, 300 a year for another 5 or 6 years, and you see all the changes that went along with this. We're up to 5 elementary schools as well. Okay? And then last spring, we were up, that's another 5 years, so spring of 12 to spring of 17, the growth was about 200 students a year on average. So you can still see significant growth over this period of time. And I want to show you all of these at once. Okay? I think a key thing to note here is when we had, this is district-wide numbers, but we had 3 elementary schools, 4,200 kids. We're not quite double that right now, but close to it. 3 elementary schools to our plan to move to 6 elementary schools. When you're doing that much change over that period of time, switching and growing, you're going to have movement. There's just no other way around it. That's what drove it, and that's what's driving it this time as well. And you can see it's different than it's been here in the past few years. There's a lot of development that's taking place in the district. The discussion about this coming has been in the works for a long time. When Pearson 6th Grade Center opened, I was the principal, and the original plan was it would stay a 6th grade center for 5 years. It actually wound up getting extended to 6 years. I think that happened when the referendum did not pass the first time, kind of pushed things out a little bit. And then the talk of changing to a 9 through 12 high school, that's been in the works for a while. So this is not a new conversation, and people that have been here a long time have seen it. We've actually gone through these changes quite a number of times, all driven by growth. And I should have said this at the beginning, but we get it. This is not something, people are here because they care about what it means to their kids and their families. They love their teachers, they love their schools, and we totally get that. We would rather not be doing this, but this is something we have to do that even though we'll say it is a good thing for the district in the long run, there is pain for a lot of people to be had in this, kids and adults. We get that part. Okay, I want to start getting into some numbers and how you read this. This was as of last May, I ran this table. This is how many kids were in each of the schools. This is what the capacity is of each of these schools. This is the percent of capacity, just this total divided by the capacity. You can see a number of them over. This column is if those developments that were on the books were fully built out. This is our estimated number of kids that we would get. I want to emphasize that part. That's when it's fully built out. Okay? The reality is that this transition plan, both grade configuration and growth that we've talked about for a while, it's happening. So 2018-19 will be in place. Pearson going back to an elementary, that's in place. And then this feeder school model we're looking at getting in place as well. And I just talked about this, well planned for, we get it. These are tough all around. Okay? This is part of the process we've used. We'll put a check mark in that box when we leave. I'll get out a pen and I'll write a little check on there. We'll say we did this tonight as well. Okay? The plan is that the board would vote on this on November 13th, make the final call. This is just showing a little bit more. I've probably been on the board agenda almost every meeting since then. I'm sure you're all watching those replay, right? No. Okay. And then I want to make sure part of this process you noticed was an attendance area task force. We had members from all over the place in the district. We had the bus company there, someone from the city of Shakopee, child care reps, school board members, administrators, and then district office staff as well. And I want to make sure I give a special thanks to, these are the task force members that get extra credit. They came to the last session and they helped here, and they'll be helping ask the questions. And then thank you guys again very much. They put in some extra time at meetings, and they're putting in extra time here again tonight. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Anybody else? Thank you. Okay. These are the members. Thank you. Okay, this is how we think about the decision-making process. You guys in the task force and anybody who sent us feedback, you're our consultants and our stakeholders. The school district and the board and the superintendent, we're like the design team. And we go through this iterative process of we try something, we get feedback, we learn something more about what's going on in the community, and we try to make it better based on the feedback that we're getting. Ultimately, the decision is made at this level. These are the decision makers. We had some questions earlier. Is it a vote? What happens? This is where the decision is made. Once the decision is made, and we do have every anticipation that our superintendent will still be involved in making that recommendation. Once it's made, we'll start implementing, but we'll still keep our head up and look for other things that might be happening as long as possible. Okay, these are the criteria that the scenarios are built upon. The walking distances, the demographic balance, transportation, capacity of the buildings, growth and development. You see them up there. It is really hard. This last one, we want them to last as long as possible. This last round is actually pushed up toward that 7-year. We haven't changed elementary boundaries in 7 years. The 6th grade center actually opened 6 years ago, 6 academic years. And so we've been pushing toward that tail end. And so this round actually lasted quite a while. Okay. This is a heat map of where the students, and most of this is focused on elementary, but this is where the students live in our district. And so each dot does not represent a kid, but it's meant to kind of give you the density of kids in each of our parts of the district. For reference, this is 169 right here. Here's the river over here. There's Jackson, Sweeney, Pearson, Sunpath, Red Oak, and Eagle Creek. If you were paying really close attention, you notice that Eagle Creek and Red Oak each can hold at capacity close to 800 students. Right here, there's only 650 students. So we get some questions about how does this happen? I don't go to the school that's closest to me. So think about the dominoes that start to fall here. There's a lot of criteria, and I have 650 kids here. I have room for 1,600 kids. Where do those other 1,000 come from? As soon as you start going out to get the other 1,000-ish kids, if you're going to put these to capacity, or 800 to 1,000 if you're leaving some space, it all of a sudden creates, where do you go? And then does that create a situation where somebody's not the closest? And when you have these other factors that you're using to try to develop these, it becomes quite a puzzle. Okay? All right. I'm going to blow this up in just a second, but this gives you an idea of where those developments are. The Haven Ridge, the newest one, is just north of this one, right above that little symbol. So this was, these symbols, the green ones generally mean that it was a development that was mostly single family or townhomes. The yellow was apartments. So let me zoom in on that and give you a closer look, and I'll let you look at that for just a second. Okay, and those estimates are based on what's the ratio of kids we get per each type of housing unit. So those are guesses, but that's based on the history of what's going on here. Okay, these are the current junior high attendance areas, and again, you can see there's those two developments. One's Lennar, and I don't know who the even is the name of that one. Okay. This is the current feeder pattern. So if you look, this purple is Red Oak, the red is Sun Path, and then if you overlaid that over the current junior high, you'll see Red Oak and Sun Path kind of feed east, Eagle Creek, Jackson, and Sweeney feed west. It's not perfect, but that's pretty much how it is. Okay? Oops. I think you have this, so I apologize for how small it is, but I want to teach you how to read it, and then we're almost done with this part, so hang in there. And I think I was a math teacher in a previous life as well, so I know how to put people to sleep if you were looking for a nap. Here we go. Okay. So this is the current, I talked about this part already. That's how many open seats there would be. Intra-district, right now, it actually works out almost perfectly. On intra-district transfers, Red Oak actually winds up a net about 25 down, Jackson about 25 up. New developments, what it would be projected to be at, capacity, projected open seats, current percentage of free and reduced lunch, current percentage of students that are special education or have an IEP, individual education plan, percentage of students that are second language learners, a whole language other than English. And then just to give a relative overall impact, made up number, I just added those up. Okay? This down here is the biggest one minus the smallest one. It's just the range. Same thing for the current elementaries and the junior highs. And that is in your handouts, right? You got it. Okay, so you should be able to see that. Okay, now I'm going to teach you how to read the scenarios. So we're almost through this part. Hang in there. Okay, so this is the current attendance area. So I know that's small, but you can compare it to this scenario. So you'll see the 6th elementary school in there, and in scenario 1A, Pearson is up here and down here. And just you can see they'd be picking up this part of Jackson becomes Pearson, that right there. This part of Eagle Creek becomes Jackson down there. Okay? Here's how you read this part. In this scenario, if we did not grandfather in intra-district transfers, okay, there would be 1,071 kids that would move. That's about 29% of our elementary students. The plan is to grandfather those in, so it's really 732 kids out of 3680, about 20%. Okay? Here's how you read this. This is the abbreviations for each of the schools: Eagle Creek, Jackson, Pearson, Red Oak, Sun Path, and Sweeney. And this is the area they pick up. So not what they lost, what they gain in this. So I called it, I made this up, so Sun Path Triangle. This area right here, that is a triangle, used to be Sun Path, now it becomes Eagle Creek. They also are picking up some kids from Red Oak that were along Eagle Creek Boulevard, along here. That's how you read this. Okay? Is that anything, Jim, Crystal, anything? Is that good? Okay? All right. Okay. I talked about this feeder school model, and this is where you'll see it in the map and you'll see it in your handouts. So if you were here last time, you thought, oh, old news, old news, old news. This is new news. So watch this part. This part is an important piece. This is Pearson Elementary right here. In this model, Pearson Elementary goes to east. We had originally left the walkers where they were currently. But to make the feeder school work and try to equalize our junior highs, we said we are going to do this true feeder model. So you'll see I put updated for true feeder model. So this area right here and a couple other small spots that I'll point out actually will feed into east now. So watch, I'm going to just overlay the new look, I think. And so you'll see that area now becomes east. This area becomes west. That was in this area, there was this little piece right there as well. Okay? So you'll see a slight difference in a couple of the different scenarios. Okay? Same way you read this. This is the total moves if intra-district transfers are not allowed. This is if they are. This is what they gain in the transaction, and this is the feeder pattern. In this feeder model, Eagle Creek, Pearson, and Red Oak go to east, and you can kind of almost lay that over there. You can see Eagle Creek and Red Oak, and then you have Pearson as well. Okay? And Sun Path actually changes completely in this one. All right, there you see it a little clearer. All right, there's the statistics for that, and I'll let you look at that on your own in just a minute. And I want to point out, if you're on a device here and you want to look at previous information or you want to see this online, we have this up there.
Yeah, it's on the main page, under today's date, it has the documents, and then if you go under presentations and documents, it's there too.
So if you look under presentations, today's date, you'll see that if you're on a device here or you want to do it at home. Okay? So what we're going to do here now is give you you were so fast last time, I don't know if 5 minutes is probably too much. I'm going to stop, let you look at the other scenarios, raise your hand if you want to ask a question. They have pens, clipboards, the question sheets. We'll give you a couple minutes to start doing this, and then they'll bring the questions up here. They'll start sorting through them and ask them, and we'll answer as many questions as we can. Okay? So it'll take a few minutes to do that. Okay, you guys, we're going to start. And again, if you have questions as we go, a follow-up or something, just raise your hand, get another clipboard or question card, and we'll go from there. Okay, fire away.
The question is, what is the rationale for or benefit of trying to balance out free and reduced lunch, English as a second language, etc.? It was my understanding that this had to do with federal and or state funds. Strongly in favor of 2B.
Okay, so can you, we're slow. Can you all hear that? Okay, is that good? We're good? Okay.
Yes.
So what we do, all the scenarios like I talked about are based on these criteria. So they're certainly that demographic free and reduced and that balance is part of it. And what that allows us to do is, the idea is having schools that actually reflect our community as a whole. So when we balance, it makes our schools look like the Shakopee community. This question alludes to, are there financial benefits and resource benefits to that? What happens when we balance as well is it allows us to make sure resources are equally distributed across all our schools and that the same programming, services, and funding can be equalized across the schools based on those percentages in some case and the number of kids that are in the school. So yes, there is an impact, and yes, that is important. And I don't know if you want to add anything to that, or Crystal, you want to add anything? Good? Okay. Can you, and I think there was a second part to that. Can you ask that one more time?
What is the rationale or benefit? Trying to balance. It is my understanding that this had to do with federal and or state funds.
It does have somewhat to do with funding, but it also has to do with the district philosophy on that we want our schools to look like the community as a whole. So there's kind of a dual part to that, and those are the same criteria that have been used in the past as well. And board directed. Okay, next question.
This is a question directed at the 7th graders. Has there been a decision regarding transition of 7th graders?
Okay, so the question is around this unique group of 7th grade kids. And again, whoever asked that, I have this, I did not pop that slide up here. Okay, so this is what could happen to some of our 7th, there it is, okay, our 7th graders this year. They were in 5th grade 2 years ago, then they changed to the 6th grade center last year, then they changed to a junior high this year. Some of the kids at East would switch to West. Not very many, but some. Some of the kids at West would switch to East, so they'd have a 4th school in 4 years. And then we would switch, then because of the grade configuration change, they would change as 9th graders again, so they'd be at 5 schools in 5 years. So it's compressing what's happening to a lot of kids, 3 schools in 5 years the way it would be right now. Okay, so one of the things we talked about, we've brought this to the board a couple times, and they're open to this, and I've actually met with the bus company to talk about what the cost would be here as well, is looking at, okay, this is, and we updated this piece as well, so Pat, this is just slightly different than what we discussed. These are the 7th graders that would be impacted. 66 West kids to East here, 18 West to East here, you get the idea. Those are the kids that could be impacted. So we talked to the bus company about this, and that's scenario 1A. Here's scenario 2A, same idea. Here's scenario 2B, same idea. So I believe that there was that doing this was something the board was very, I'm going to use a big word here, amenable, favorable with. I don't think a final decision was made on this, but there was a question around what the actual cost is. And I worked on those cost numbers with Pat, and we have a ballpark idea. We need to update it a little bit with some of that area in there. But this one, you can see it's a lot more students. The best guess at the time was this would be about 3 buses worth. This would be about 1 bus worth. That's assuming that every student in that situation would be making that choice. Not every student might make that choice, and so we'd have to figure that out. But I think that the board was looking upon this as a way to mitigate that experience for that group of 7th graders for that 1 year that would be done. They'd still have 4 transitions, but it would be 1 lesson. That's about as good as we can do in that situation. And I think I think that's it on that. Did you have a follow-up on that?
Yeah, actually, my daughter would be one of the 18 over in that little spot.
Yeah.
And so, are you
So the idea would be, sorry, thank you. That the district would send a bus into those areas for 1 year to keep those 7th graders at the same middle school / junior high for that 8th grade year, and then 9th grade they would switch. And again, so there's 18 in that corner down here in this example. Not all, some of them might say, you know what, I want to change anyway. They might just say they want to do it, but it might be that people say that I don't. I want to go back and finish where I was. So, this is the piece I'm talking about that we're also trying to figure out. We don't quite understand the full impact of this yet. But one of the things, well, I'll just talk about it from here, is we could wind up saving a little money. We don't know for sure, and I'm not holding you to this, Pat. Pat's from the bus company, so if I keep referencing her, and you tell if I'm off, you tell me to stop, okay? All right. Is because of the criteria of walking distance, there's a lot of kids within a half a mile of Pearson Elementary. All those kids hundreds of kids are being bused right now. Those kids will not be bused next year. So we could see a net decrease in the number of bus riders, which could save us. I'm making this part up. Okay, making this up. Okay, I haven't done the math, but could save us enough money to pay for that 1 year's worth, and maybe there'd be some additional savings maybe down the road. Is that wild, or is that possible?
I think that's possible.
That's possible, but it might not be, but it could be, okay? All right, next question.
Is classroom size being considered with the changes that occurred during a redraw? What does Shakopee currently advertise as target class size, and what is our goal going forward? Currently, I'm worried our class sizes are too large.
Okay, so I'm going to speak to this first from the elementary level and then from the junior high level. We do have class size targets, and so at the elementary, you guys help me, is it 20 at kindergarten, 22, 22, what, 20?
23.
Okay, Patrick, come on. Who's, because I have a bunch of elementary principals. What?
First and second is 23, fourth, third and fourth are 25, and fifth grade is 27.
Okay, so it's 20 for kindergarten, 23 and 23 for first and second, 25 for third and fourth, 27 for fifth. So, yep, get it? And at the junior highs, the target is 30? What's the target? What's the average number? 32, 33. So here's what happens. So any of those numbers I just gave you, when that's the target, let's say, when the target's 25, you're going to have some above, some below, and that gets kind of staffed at the district level. And when you get to a certain point where you're too much above the target, that's when that triggers another section, okay? So let me go back and I'm going to connect this to the intra-district transfer, and then I'm actually going to answer the question about class size. So let's say the intra-district transfer starts happening and we wind up with a bunch of kids that want to go to one school. The reason we need to have a cutoff date is because we want to say yes to the capacity. If we hit that tipping point for another section, we will add that section in there. If we get this done early enough, we have a chance to respond. So the number of sections we have is based on the number of kids we have. And that's true across the district. And so the class sizes, I'll speak to the elementary right now, that's we get the number of staff we need to be at that target as good as possible. Doug pointed out it's a target, not a cap. So sometimes we'll float above, and sometimes we'll float below. So when I was a principal at Sweeney and the class size targets were, whatever they were, I'll use these numbers, 23, I might be at a situation where mine are exactly 23, 23, 22, 23. Nice. Doug at his school might have 25s. He's right there. He's not quite at the tipping point. He's a little higher. And Mitch at Red Oak might be at 21, 22. But when I look at the whole district as a whole, I'm at that 23, 25 number as a whole. Sometimes you're on the high side of that. Sometimes you're on the low. But you're not going to be so far on the high side that it's going to, we'll add the section at that point when it gets too far out of whack. So there's always going to be a little bit of a range because kids don't come in perfect bundles of 23 or 25 or whatever it is. But when you look across the district as a whole, the goal is to have us at their, elementary principals. Is that anything? It's good? Okay. And I'm going to let Jim talk a little bit about Jim's the principal at East Junior High and let him talk about that one.
I think that the shifts in enrollment will allow us the space to hit the class size if we have the funding available to make those classes possible. Right now we have buildings where we're using media centers and other spaces because we're over capacity. These boundaries will put all of our buildings under capacity. Therefore, if we have the funding available, we'll be able to hit those class caps. Sometimes we can't do that right now because we don't have the classroom space available. This plan will allow it to happen.
Okay, all right, next, yep.
This question is, with future growth in mind, even further in the future than included in the plan, what elementary school would ideally have the most spots left open for future growth?
Okay. So, because there's these moving parts, you do the best you can with this, okay? So here's what the Eric Weiss from the city was part of our attendance area task force. And so if you drive, I'm going to give an example here and get to this answer. On Marystown Road, which is south of 169, you're going to see a lot of dirt moving over there. And there's a development that's happening right there. And I think right now that's drawn in some of these it's drawn into Sweeney. It might be all three of them it's drawn into Sweeney. But he said that opens the door. There's a whole bunch of land west and south of there if you've gone over in that area. So we would want to leave some open seats in Sweeney and Jackson. And so it could happen that, I'm not going to say the most because you can't know for sure what's going to happen. This Canterbury Commons, which was going to be 700 units that is now on hold, but we don't know what's going to happen with that. So we want to make there some open seats wherever there's potentially development. But I'm going to go back to that area south and west of 169 over at, just west of Marystown. And that is, that let's say that development starts going huge, and right now it's all drawn into Sweeney. But our estimates of what would happen at Jackson, say, with that child care center or other developments in there don't happen the way that we guessed they would happen. So that's a guess. We're trying to be as scientific as possible. That we would maybe make an adjustment before the end of the 3 to 5 or 7 years, however long these things last, for just that area. So you could wind up saying, you know what? This development wound up with a higher number of kids than we expected that's drawn into Sweeney. Sweeney is filling up. Jackson didn't have some of the estimates come through that we expected. We change on the fly for a specific area. Would that be what we want to do? No, but that's what we want to do when we keep our heads up and respond. So it's really a hard question to answer. You want to do as good a job as you can up front so you don't have to do that, but that might be something that happens. Okay?
It says, sorry if I missed this, regarding intra-district transfers. Will existing intra-transfers need to reapply, or will these be grandfathered in before the March 1st date opens up?
I would say this is a question we're going to need to tighten up a little bit for sure, right, Crystal? Okay, we need to tighten this one up. That I believe this year we are going to need to have everybody redo this. And I think as far as having them do this before that March 1st deadline, I think we're going to need to talk about that one. We are going to need to have a way of differentiating those. So we don't have that locked in. Do you have any initial thoughts on that?
No, I would say that we've talked about it, and we're gonna have to even firm up those dates and all those things, so once we get more into it, get those details more set.
Okay, so we're getting that down. We need to address that and tighten that process up, but that would be the idea, that we make sure we get those in place. And some of those are gonna be hard to determine, because you could wind up in a scenario being drawn into the current school that you're going to, and it would no longer be an inter-district transfer. You could wind up at the school that you're going to now that is outside of your current attendance area. So until we're done, you won't actually know anyway. Does that make sense? Yeah, but we do anticipate that we're going to have space. Okay?
This is coming from a person who has children at Jackson and at West. It says, I have a 7th grader and a 5th grader who would be affected by 1A and 2A. 7th grader would have 5 schools in 5 years. Even if allowed to stay at West for 8th grade, then I would have a 6th grader at East and a 8th grader at West. Has any further analysis been done on current 7th graders that would be moved under the various plans? I vote for 2B.
Okay. I want to make sure I understand that one. So this is somebody who's got kind of a unique situation where then you'd have one kid at one school and one at the other. So if having siblings at the same school was a priority, and the one you didn't want to have 5 schools at 5 years, so you said, yeah, if that option's out there, I want that bus to come and get me and bring me to the same junior high / middle school I was at as a 7th grader. But now I have an incoming 6th grader, but because of where I'm at, is going to wind up going to East. I'm going to say an answer, and this would be one we need to discuss further as well, but if that's an unfortunate situation, and I'm sure there's more than one person in the district that's there, but you'd almost have to make a decision of what's the priority. I think, do you want your kids to be in the same school? Or can the 6th grader say, okay, I'm going to go to East, then I'm going to be there for 3 years, and I'll have the 3 years there with the same kids I went to, in the 6th grade center with, or at least half of them. So I think it would come down to, this is me thinking out loud, a personal choice of what's your priority. Is the priority to have the 2 kids together, or the priority to have that 6th grader go where they are? For the 6th grader, the way it stands right now, that bus would come into that area, and it would get the 7th grader, bring them to West in this specific example. The 6th grader would get the bus to East. I'm not sure how we would work that busing if we would need to work that. That's a unique situation I think we would need to work out. But my initial reaction to that is, and I think we probably need to work the details on that one too, is that you'd have to make a choice on what's the more important for you and your kids and your family. Okay? So follow-up, I'm not sure. The follow-up question was, who would make that decision? Is it up to the district or the bus company? I think it's going to be a district call on how we decide that's going to work. I have 2 people who work closely. Is that right? Is that what you're thinking too?
We do what the school district tells us to do.
Say again.
We do what the school district tells us to do.
They do what the school district tells them to do. Okay. We need to figure that one out. So that would be something where we get this is hard, and we want to be human about this. We want to be real about this. So if that would be your situation, we'd want to call and talk that through. However, I do think could very well come down to you're going to have to make a decision. What's the priority?
And is that only going to be for 1 year? So then wouldn't the 6th grader have to choose
It would be for only that 1 year where that bus might even be an option. Yes. Yep. Okay. Next, yep.
How do the changes in new developments affect the capacity tables for the elementary schools? And they're referring to addition of Haven Ridge and cancellation of Canterbury Park apartments.
That's a really good question. Thank you for, and that, Bob, whoever caught that is paying attention, so thank you for, because that bothered me when I popped them up there too. So I'll show you what I think they're talking about. So I'll use this one as an example. So this right here includes all 7 of the developments. What I should have, it's hard to know what to do when you're making these guesses, right? So right now it includes, it doesn't include the city development, but it includes, and all of them are like this. It includes, yeah, it actually includes all of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, those estimates do. So I know we don't want to do this, we want to stick to the cards, but I'm going to invite someone, if they're willing, whoever asked that question, to tell me, did I answer the question?
Because it includes those 95 students that
Yeah.
will now not be going to whatever school they were zoned for in the 3 options. How does that affect the open spots and potentially another neighborhood to move to fill those spots if the school that they're at is closer to overcapacity?
That's what makes this tough, because as soon, you're right, but the way they phrased it in that article was on hold. The difference between that and the city one was they said cancel, right? But that one could come back online too. That was all apartments and that would generate less kids. So as soon as we say, okay, that's 95 kids, take them out of that 170 at Red Oak, I think is where that was. Then we redraw to fill that, and then they put it back online. So it's kind of nuanced for how you plan for that. I don't know what the right answer is to that. But in that numbers that you see there, they're still planning there. But right now it's a guess. And so when I talked about that iterative process, that thing could come back online. Crystal, do you have any?
No, not from what we saw in the paper.
Okay.
And they could scrap it or redraw it or, yeah.
Yeah, so it could come back online anytime, or it could
Different.
be, I'm not a developer, but there's always a possibility it never even happens. Mike, do you have anything different? No? Okay. So, good question, and we just don't know. We can also find out there's another development that's coming online we didn't know about, or another one of these you almost have to put your stake in the ground and say, this is what we're assuming, that one's still coming, or that one's not, and go from there. So, hard question, it's a hard one. Okay, next. Yep.
This is another clarification question from somebody who is already going to West Junior High.
Could you go a little closer?
Sure. He said, I would be willing to pay extra to have my current 7th grader go to West Junior High next year. So I'm thinking the question is, why won't the school district allow people to pay for their kids to be bused as long as there's capacity for Palmer to carry those kids? I think, right? Remember that question?
So this would be, I'm assuming, for a 7th grader that is not one of those 7th graders that's in that unique situation, but there's just a west preference or an east preference. Why couldn't we just, if a bus is going in, because normally a bus wouldn't even go into that area, so they'd be sending a different bus into that area to get kids, and that is something that I don't even think it's really a capacity question. It's where do our routes go to get kids? And so I don't think a bus would even go in there. But the question is, in a different sense is if there's space and I walk maybe to a bus stop, or I got my kid to a bus stop that was there, could we pay for that? I just think historically we haven't done that. I don't know, that might be something that we do explore further. It's maybe a little bit, and I'm not trying to dodge this question, but maybe a little bit outside the scope of this one here, but I think it's a valid question that somebody could send on to our superintendent or our school board as something that we develop a position on. To date, we wouldn't even send a bus into that area. This is a unique situation that we're in for those 7th graders that might switch junior highs. Is that fair? Fair? Okay.
I think I might have a little insight. I'm guessing this person probably lives like right about a mile, and the buses go right by their house. Like that's what happens with my kid walks, but he's like 1 point whatever right around the mile mark. So maybe that's what they're thinking. Hey, there's a bus stop right here. My kid could technically walk there.
So that's,
The bus is going right by. Why can't I just pay to have them just pick them up if there's other kids right there?
in that, so I misunderstood the question. This was it goes, I still go to West, but I live just outside of where I could get a bus. I think that's something, yeah, here.
This is a question that we do get at the start of the year from a lot of different parents. Dave is right. Historically, it isn't something we've done. We run into a number of different capacity issues. Say there's 56 students on a 60-student bus. Does that mean we take the first 4 and the 5th person doesn't get on? It creates a number of different issues. I know that it was something that was under consideration this fall and it was being discussed, but no new decisions were made. So just historically, it's not something that the district has allowed. It does impact a number of people because there are a number of kids that are going to live, right on a borderline and could walk a short distance to a bus, but it's going to create a whole other set of capacity issues for us.
This is more of a comment on transportation. Do you want to hear it? It's not necessarily a question, but yeah, go for it. Okay. Oh, okay. It is one thing to move schools. It's another thing to be inconvenienced into having to drive your kids past nearby neighborhood schools to get to school. It seems unfair for some neighborhoods to bear both these burdens while other people enjoy the convenience of going to neighborhood schools. We would be happy to continue to keep driving further if it meant we did not have to change schools again. We would also be happy to change schools if it meant going to our neighborhood school. We are frustrated and not happy with the possibility of having to take on both burdens with this change. We propose 2B, where we would keep driving 10 minutes to school but don't have to also change schools. All plans have us driving 10 minutes to our school.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay. Next question.
Next one is also a transportation question. It says our current,
Just a little closer to
oh, sorry. Their current schools are East and Pearson. It says, how can we help our non-drivers and all kids get transportation to the high school? 2 miles equals 45 minutes. One-way walking, just not okay in the winter.
So the question is around the district transportation policy, which right now is a half a mile for our elementaries. What is it, 1 mile for the 6th grade center and junior highs, and 2 miles for the high school. Is that? That's right. So, am I? I'm. Okay. All right. So it's part of our district. No. But no, I think that's a question that our transportation department has received a lot of this fall. Is that right, Joanne?
And we're talking about it especially because 9th graders are moving next year. So it's definitely on our radar.
So here, I'll fill it. I'll get it. So it's been on the radar, and the question is also, you have 9th graders right now that are 1 mile. We switch them to the high school, and it becomes 2 miles.
We also have 8th grade students from West going to take high school classes that were also told to walk 2 miles because they're taking a high school class. And so it's even happening this year with 8th graders. So we want to be really thoughtful about that because my son was impacted. So he
Let me say that. I'm going to make both of these, so make sure everybody heard that. One is, we've had a lot of questions about the walking distance this year. So I know that that's something that's been closely looked at by our district leadership and our transportation department. And I'm not saying this again, we're going to draw the attendance areas, and then that's a different conversation. So I'm, again, not trying to dodge that one here, but I assure you, it doesn't mean it's going to change. It might change, but it's been something that is being worked on, okay? Pat, but from the bus company and Jolene in our district transportation department. The second comment was, we have 8th graders that take classes at the high school, that there's been some communication around them needing to walk, which I'm confused by. That doesn't. Yeah, the comment is, I want to come back to this just in a second. The half mile, and 2 miles, I think I actually looked this one up. The distance, it doesn't mean it's not far. Don't hear me wrong on this. 2 miles is far, okay? 1 mile is far unless you're working out. So 2 miles is set actually for all levels by the state. They say if you're beyond 2 miles, the district needs to bus you. The district has said we're going to lower that from 2 miles to a half mile for elementary. We lowered that for grades 6 through 9 for our junior highs to 1 mile. And we're using the state guideline for our high school students at 2 miles. Nobody is going to argue that that's not far. And I know it's something that's been on the radar and open for discussion. That's how I read the statute. Say that again. And there's funding for beyond 2 miles, within 2 miles, there is a transportation funding that goes with that. All that being said, we have taken a lot of feedback on this issue this year, okay? I know it's related to this, but it almost lives alone. Even if we weren't redrawing the attendance areas, this is a discussion that based on feedback I think we'd be having. And when I say that, I'm not in a position here to say that's changing. I'm also not in a position to say it's not changing. Questions around paying for busing if I'm within that range or what that actual walk distance could be. Those are discussions I think that if our community is giving us indication that we need to open this up to discussion, then that we should be doing that anyway, regardless of what's happening with this. Okay? All right?
Here's the next question. The current school is Jackson. It says, how long will these scenarios hold? And are we foreseeing another attendance area change in a few years?
Okay. So how long will these hold, and will we see another change in the next few years? The goal would be, and actually we had these kind of last 6 or 7 years, depending on where you started counting. Our elementaries, this will be the 7th year in a row with them that changing. At our junior high level, it's 6 years in a row, because that's when the 6th grade center started, and when we became, is that how many years we've been 7 through 9? Right? Both of our schools, so 6 years. Ideally, we'd like them to last that long, but if what the city guy said happens, and our economy stays like it is, and these developments build out as fast as these guys would like, and our projections on these numbers are, if we underdid them, then it'll happen faster. If we overestimate it, it'll happen slower. So it's us just kind of keeping our heads up. Again, I would rather not, personally, this is me selfish, Dave Orlowski here, I don't want to do this project again. So I hope they last a really long time. So I'm motivated, just like you guys are, for different reasons. Okay? All right, so I can't, so do we see this down the road? at some point down the road, yeah, this is probably going to happen again. But I hope all your kids are done with school at that time, and that I'm not involved in the project.
So there was additional feedback to that question. Do you want me to read that too, or no?
Sure.
It says, my neighborhood is located west of Marshall Road, and we are a logical fit to stay at Jackson versus going through 5 stoplights to get to Pearson. In another scenario, 2B, a neighborhood by Saks would be bused across busy Marshall to go to Jackson, when our neighborhood would be passed by. We are the same socioeconomically. Our neighborhood is west of Marshall and south of Highway 169 and fits distance-wise to be a neighborhood school to Jackson. In addition, in 2A, our neighborhood would feed into West Junior High, logical, right down the road, versus bused further away and across busy Marshall to East Junior High in scenario 2B.
Okay, here's what I'm going to comment on that. What we did last time, I actually have them right here. These are all the questions from last time. And so what we did afterwards, and I actually did it again today, is I went through to make sure I understood all of them. And the ones that I usually probably struggled more with, like when I will look at that one again, we'll look at that again, and make sure I completely understood while I have a map in front of me to try to make sure I get that. That was a lot of moving parts, but we will go back and look at those again, and I'll make sure I get it. Okay? You do have something? Yeah, go ahead.
To ask tonight. It says we're using cutoff dates. What happens when someone moves after the cutoff dates? And this happened to somebody this year who moved into a new home and was forced to go to east but even though the new house that they weren't in yet is drawn into west, they said, nope, you have to go to east even though because you're not moving in right now. So it was a beginning of the year deal, and now they're in that home, but now their kid is forced to go east, even though there's a bus that they could take to west. Just curious on how that works.
I don't even, I don't know what to say to that. You got that? They're coming in via text now?
No, it was a question asked to me by somebody like 2 weeks ago, and
Okay.
I was like, I don't know. So
Okay.
I just thought I would ask it.
Yeah, I'm going to let Jim answer that.
The best answer I give to that is West is closed because of the enrollment. It's about 110% capacity, so students not living in the west boundary are not given the opportunity to open enroll. I'm not quite sure. I would need to check to understand why a west bus would be going into the east boundary to begin with. It could be a situation where they might be able to walk to a west bus stop, but we certainly wouldn't be running a bus across junior high lines. So that's the best I got.
What had happened was the person was living in the east boundary. They were moving to the west boundary. Their child was told they had to stay at east even though they would be living in west.
And that was what I said, because west is closed to open enrollment because they're over
For the whole year, though, or until they move?
When they move, they have the right to go to west.
Oh, okay.
And that happens all the time. When kids move, then they go to west, but until they actually physically move, we can keep them to the east right now because the enrollments are so discrepancy.
So let me repeat that in case you're trying. West is at 110% of capacity. So while a student was living in East, they went to East. And when they moved into the West area, then they can go to West. It does seem like that's unfortunate timing as well, and maybe tough on that student as well. I don't know how quickly the move happened, if it was a few weeks in, and so you're saying I go to East for a few weeks, then I move and go to West. I think we just want to make sure that we are taking a close look in those situations as well. So sorry for the student or family that wound up in that situation. That could be a challenging
So
one.
that would lead me to the question of the inter-enrollment. If somebody moved after, let's say, May 1st, when the March 1st cutoff date, and let's say that part was already full, what if the same situation were to happen? Would they be forced to go to a different school, or would they be able to still?
So let me make sure I understand the scenario.
Somebody moved new into the district, but they missed the cutoff to inter-enroll their kid.
Okay, I'm not getting it. Say it one more time.
Okay, so if same situation, but under these new guidelines next year, but it's after March 1st, let's say it's June.
Okay.
They move into the district, but they've already been told oh, the school's already 100%, so you can't choose your school. You're a brand new person in Shakopee, but you don't get to enter and enroll like everybody else had the chance to do in March. What happens with that? Is that something that would be case by case?
So let me rephrase and say, here's the question. I move in after all this inter-district transfer has been happening, and I moved into East area. But I really want, for some reason, I know I want to go to West, even though I haven't been here. I know that's what I want to do, okay? But I've lost the same opportunity the people that were here had. Is that right? How would we do that? If there was space, we'd want to say yes. If there wasn't space, we'd have to say no. Right? Okay. Other questions? Okay, I'm going to do this, and we want to.
We can get that too.
I got my pen, but,
Okay,
and my question might be a little, hard to write down, but looking through all three scenarios, the junior highs look like they are either at or dangerously close to capacity, even without the new developments.
correct.
What happens in those scenarios?
So the question, and that's you are correct. So if you look, actually that's current. So let me jump to one of the scenarios. Okay, if you look, you're saying dangerously close to, like right here. There's 100% and 97%, and they're all kind of like that, right? So what we've got right now, and that is very close, and that makes this inexact science challenging. And so right now, our biggest class in the pipeline is the 7th grade class. They were about 680, how many 6th graders were there last year, Kevin? 682. That's the biggest class for a number of years. That class will roll out of the junior highs or middle schools. They're the class that's our current 7th graders. They'll be in the junior highs one more year, and then we'll bring in a class that's about 40 kids less. That still does not give us a huge cushion, but gives us some cushion. And that's also part of the reason why we are redoing, hang on, I'm getting there. I am really not trying to make you dizzy. I can get there. Why we are doing this study, again, we want to make sure that we have that right, because we do see that as an issue as well. We have a couple models where we have done this and we've rolled it out multiple years, like rolling up the 3rd grade class, the 4th grade class, the 5th grade class, even into the 2nd grade class, to see what happens years down the road. And that's easier for us to do right now because we have this true feeder model. So we can look at if this 2nd grade class, and it's without developments rolled in, 3 years from, or 4 years from now, this 2nd grade class is 6th grade, the 3rd grade class is 7th grade, the 4th grade class is 8th grade, and what that looks like. So it actually looks slightly better going forward, but you're right. This is where the pressure point is in the district now, because you can see we're going to have some space in our elementary schools. The high school is good for hopefully quite a few years, but the pressure point is in the middle. So yes, that is an issue. That is why we're doing this again. I know Lori's back there, the principal at this building right here, and one thing that has happened is, as all our kids now have devices, 2 computer labs, all 3 computer labs were repurposed to classrooms this year, which was a logical move because wherever kids go is basically a computer lab right now. So we added some capacity there as well. And so we want to make sure we're doing capacity calculations correctly. And so, yes, that's a good observation. And we see that as well, and we're going to just make sure we have it right. Okay? This is a rare occurrence where a meeting could end early. You don't have to be part of this rare thing if you don't want to, but there are no other questions up here right now. So here's what we'll do. I'm going to stay here till anybody's gone. Jim, Crystal, we have some other members of our district staff here. We actually have, I think, we have Reggie is here, Reggie Bowerman, a board member, Angela Tucker, Sean Hallett. Who else is? I swear, am I missing? Loft was here earlier. So we have board members here as well. Jim, you can talk to, if you want to talk to a task force member, you can do that, right? As well. Okay, so again, I want to thank my...
I do have one quick question, and that was one kind of what you just addressed, but I was curious if the board members are up to date on what we have discussed in the last couple of meetings, whether it's just the task force or the last listening session. Are they up to date or briefed on what we've discussed, or are they just get it all right before their meeting?
No, I have, so they watched this online from the last session. I've presented at, again, almost every board meeting. I actually, so they have had that information, like I've given them that update from there as well. And so I'm going to say yes on their behalf. Would you nod or something? Nod or either way? Yes, yes. And 3 of the board members were on the task force as well. And there were 3 board members at the last public listening and input session as well. And there is some challenge of, I think somebody's going to have to help me here, having a quorum at these meetings and whether it's an official board meeting or not. So I think, is that a valid issue here?
As long as you post it, we're okay. We posted it.
It's been posted, okay. So I'm going to say yes, absolutely. And I think they know it's a big deal. This is a hard task, and I think we want to do as good a job as possible. And again, you see, there's a lot of moving parts, but we're trying to stay abreast of that and make the best decision we can. There might be things that happen that it happens a different way than we anticipated or something we missed, but we're trying to stay on top of it. So I'm going to give a short answer, yes. Okay, all right, so we will stay, and I want to thank you guys very much for being involved and your willingness to come and ask your questions and put the time in tonight. So thank you.